I'm just a big believer in the idea that clarity beats cleverness. And you've talked about this in other interviews, but over time, your lyrics have moved more to the front of the music, and
Relatively speaking.
relatively speaking, I would say, yeah. Over the course of the time that you've been making music, do you feel like there's been a process of sort of internal thought change and wanting to get out more of your thoughts in a way that is sort of clear to people, or do you think that you've talked before about sort of stepping up to the plate, as it were, of ideas because the times call for it more?
I mean, I don't think it's ever been that I wanted the ideas or the lyrics in the background. To be honest, I think to a point aesthetically, I wanted the lyrics to be an instrument in the mix, but primarily, what it really is that I wanted the music to be as impactful as possible. So I didn't want the vocals overpowering the music, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, in the past, the technology really wasn't there at least for us, to keep the music impactful and have the lyrics be clear. I think as I've grown as a musician and as an engineer, I think, and also just the way technology has evolved, I feel like I'm able to place the vocals in a better place now in the mix. So I think it's not really about like that I didn't want the lyrics out there before. It's not that at all. It's just I didn't want that, like, for lack of a better term, like that karaoke feel, like where the vocals are like so loud and so upfront that it makes the music sound tiny. You know what I mean? Because I feel like the music, I want that to be very impactful. So it was just more of a mix option. And obviously, like My Bloody Valentine being an influence, aesthetically, we chose to kind of go with the wall of sound kind of thing where the vocals were a little more buried in the mix. I also feel that it does this thing where it makes you concentrate more on the lyrics because they're buried a bit. So it makes people work a little harder to hear what I'm saying. So that, you know what I mean? Like it's like that's tricky because it's like if it's too low, people are missing what I'm saying. But at the same time, I want people listening closely and listening multiple times. So I think like having the vocals more in the mix kind of lends itself to that.
Yeah, I was listening to some of your music today, and I was just really enjoying exactly what you said, that the lyrics were interesting, and I felt like they were worth listening to, but it was cohesively written with the music, and I kept wishing that I was listening to it on vinyl with some headphones. Like, I wanted to really be hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, like, we've gotten that, that we're definitely like headphone music, and I agree with that to a degree. I mean, I think it's definitely something to witness live as well, because the live show is something I almost feel like it's completely different than what the records are in a lot of ways, just because, just the nature of live sound. But I hope to make multiple listen music. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to get everything that the song is about in one listen. I want you to be able to listen to it multiple times, and I also want you to be able to go back 5 years from now and listen to it again and hear something that you never heard all the previous times you heard it. And that's kind of like I appreciate that in music, like where the little attention to details and the little, those like little parts that you may not pick up on, and then one day like that's like the only thing you hear. Like, I love that about music. Like I was actually talking in the van, Tom Petty passing. I'm actually a huge Tom Petty fan, and was lucky enough to see him play live. For the first time I've ever seen him live was in Queens, back home, a few months ago. And there's like a part in this one song actually I think it might be the title track, Wildflowers, where I was like, oh, when they play this live, they're probably not. It's probably not going to have like that little guitar lick that's in there. It's probably just like a studio thing. You know what I mean? Like, I doubt they would even like think about playing. Like, you know what I mean? And like, sure enough, like that little piece was there, and I was just like, wow, like just that attention to detail. Like, I love shit like that, man.
Yeah, I definitely love that richness that some music has for going back. I was sort of re-listening with the eclipse happening. I re-listened to a bunch of Pink Floyd, and
it's a perfect example.
It's so enjoyable to go back and listen to that stuff, even though you've heard it 1,000 times. Every time, it's just enjoyable.
Look, I love like 3-chord punk too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a time and place for that as well. Or for like for just like simple structure music too. I mean, there could be something very beautiful about that. But there's just something about just like dense production and just layered production, like where you're picking up on different things, different times you hear it. That it's just, I don't know, like you said, it's just special, man. Like I just enjoy it as a music fan. I enjoy it. So I hope that we do that with our records.
I've heard you talk about hip hop in a way that I don't hear many people talk about hip hop, in that you like fluidly can connect, all of the different influences. Like I've heard you talk about, Africa Bambaataa being influenced by Kraftwerk, and you understand parts of the history of hip hop that I think there's still an enormous audience for, but I think that some people maybe who still consider themselves hip hop heads have forgotten or sort of relegated to another era. If you were talking to somebody young who considered themselves a hip hop head but understood that maybe they were lacking some of the early history of it, it would be easy for them to just sort of go listen to Biggie and Tupac and go, like go back and sort of hit all the big names. Who are some of the important people that you think have maybe been sort of left behind and forgotten that really should be studied by a young student of hip hop today who wants to understand the history of it and go deep?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna go chronologically, but I just feel like if you want to know what hip hop is about, like listen to anything that Large Professor produced. I mean, I feel like Large Professor is like by far like one of the. I mean, I don't want to say underrated because I feel like a lot of heads know, but maybe a lot of heads don't know anymore. I mean, like I don't know.
Well, maybe it's that there's a younger generation that can only sort of. I mean, they may call themselves heads, but
Well, I mean, here's the thing with hip hop.
Who gets to decide? Who gets to arbitrate that?
Well, the
definition?
the thing about hip hop that I love and hate about it is that it's it's a youth-driven music, you know what I mean? So, like, we're like the only genre that basically doesn't give a fuck about who came before, which can work to our advantage or to our detriment, you know what I mean? Because it's always reinventing itself, which I love about hip-hop. But at the same time, I feel like there's so much to be learned from people that came before you. So, like, I'm a student. I'm a student of the game, and I'm a student of music in general. So, to me, studying what people like Lost Professor did, what people like Prince Paul did, and still do, to be honest, 'cause that's the thing. Like, these cats are still producing stuff. Stuff that Premier did, Pete Rock. I think those are like that right there is like they're probably responsible for like most of the golden age hip hop that I still listen to this day. I mean, you could put RZA in that world.
I got to see Premier at Moogfest.
That's what's up.
Recently, and Flying Lotus.
Yeah, that's what's up. Very nice.
It was very much like an inheritor of that mindset of production.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like from the classic heads, I think like you have those producers, and like a dude like Flying Lotus. I think like to me, it's funny because he's not even that new anymore. Because he's been doing it for a minute now. But like I've watched him. Like I remember playing. We played a festival, the Meltdown Festival in England. Massive Attack invited us to play.
Oh wow!
The Bug played at Kevin Martin, and Kevin Martin was like, "Yo, you gotta check this kid that's playing before us," and it was Flying Lotus, and like we were on the side of the stage watching that shit, and I was like, "Yo, that's the future right there." Like that, he was killing it. You know what I mean? And it's funny, man. Like I know like. Especially hip hop can be so competitive, so I know like a lot of heads like always like hate on each other, but I'm like the opposite of that, man. Like when I see someone shining, I love that, man, because to me, I feel like there's enough out there for everyone to eat, and I want to see good music be heard and be made, and to see cats that are like pushing it forward. I feel like that whole Brain Feeder clique, that LA clique is doing amazing work, man. Like my brother Ganja Sufi. All those cats, man, like Gaslamp Killer. I mean, even it was a Kamasi Washington, the jazz dude that's down with them.
Kamasi
Washington, Kamasi Washington, Thundercat. I mean, like, yo, there's just so many heads out there that's killing it. Another dude, man, that's like I don't know how. I mean, he isn't unsung to me, but like my brother, House Shoes, originally from Detroit, who's living out in L.A., got this label, Street Corner Music, and that cat, like that dude was like his ear, man. He's like the master curator. Like everyone that's on his label is fire, and he got like all these younger cats and like older heads from Detroit, and some heads that kind of like moved all over the country. And he has like these producers, and he's releasing these releases, man. Like everything he puts out, I'm like mesmerized by. So he has a lot of cats on there that's really doing their thing, man. So that's more like the newer stuff that's happening right now. But I feel like all these are like integral parts of like what to me makes hip hop so beautiful, especially right now because there's so many different variants of it. You know what I mean? There's all types of things going on, man. Like more soulful stuff, straight boom bap stuff, more experimental stuff. I mean, it's crazy how much good music there is right now, man. Like you throw like like even like stuff like Shabazz Palaces. I mean, there's just I hate when people say like, oh, nothing good comes out anymore. I'm like, yo, out of here with that, man. There's so much good shit out there. It's just you have to take the time and look for it.
So now I want to ask you the inverse question of that. So I like standout track for me, production-wise, is Paragraph's Relentless from Abandoned Language. The use of that Doppler siren as a melodic device, like I just think that's one of the most like psychedelic and sort of interestingly produced tracks I'd ever heard. Hip-hop is a culture that, for a lot of people, is easy to be nuclear. And people who are often, it's like the country music culture, for example. There's a lot of people in those scenes who only listen to that one genre. So to someone who lives and breathes hip-hop, what is some music that you would recommend listening to that has obviously influenced you? You've been influenced by like noise rock and drone and experimental and all kinds of stuff has gone into your music. I can tell you listen to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you mean as far as like stuff that's influenced us, the stuff that I'm listening to right now in general? You know what I mean?
Just like so my question was sort of going back into the history of hip hop. Who are some people that you think a hip hop head should look at?
Okay.
And then this is sort of
like outside of that.
What should a hip hop head listen to that's not hip hop? Like what are some people that stand out to you that you think are maybe ignored by the hip hop community as just good music?
Yeah, that's so tricky, man. Because I feel like if you're, especially like early hip hop, man. Like if you were a producer or a DJ, you were listening to everything. Because when this started, there was no hip hop. So the people that were creating hip hop weren't listening to hip hop. I mean, we were as it was coming out, but when we were creating it, we were listening to everything else because we were using everything else to create hip hop. So that's like that's always been like my not my argument, but like my statement that what I do, people try to label it, people have tried to label it everything under the sun, man. Like like anything that was coming out, be it trip hop, be it experimental, be it whatever, they tried to name it that. But to me, at its core, it's hip hop because basically I'm taking all the influences of everything that's around me and creating something brand new with it. So I was influenced by stuff like as diverse as Faust, My Bloody Valentine, Velvet Underground, Pink Floyd, early Pink Floyd to an extent, as far as like Pipers to the Gates of Dawn. But at the same time, I was listening to Zeppelin, a lot of dub, like Bad Professor, Scientist, King Tubby. Man, it's like there's not one genre of music that I like. I like it all, man. Like I don't like all music because there's good and bad, but that's basically it. It's like I think it was Phil Spector that said that shit. Where it's like there's two kinds of music, good and bad. You know what I mean? And I really subscribe to that. Like I don't really care about genre. And I feel like at this point in 2017, it's almost pointless because like genres are so melted and blended together. Even the people that are creating stuff that don't realize that what they're doing is influenced by something else. When you hear it, you can hear the influences from like different genres. You know what I mean? So genre is really irrelevant to me. To me, it's just like, yo, is the song good? But yeah, I mean, like I named some of the older groups that influenced me there. And like I said, man, it's just exciting times in music. Like I'm listening to all types of stuff. There's a group right now, Black Marble, that I'm kind of obsessed with. Mets out of Toronto. Odonis is doing some crazy stuff. Um, there's a lot of good stuff, man. There's a lot of good, a lot of good electronic, a lot of good rock, just a lot of just good stuff in general, man. I mean, it's hard for me to pinpoint like certain shit because it's like I could easily talk to you for an hour about like just salsa music, you know what I mean, from the '70s, you know what I mean? So it's like I don't know, like, and all the thing. That's the thing. It's like whatever you listen to influence you in one way or another. You know what I mean? Like Hector Lavoe influences me, but it's not like you can listen to Dälek and hear it specifically. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a huge influence in what I do. You know what I mean? So.
You kind of talked about this. You talked about it when you were coming off, I think, the tour with Melvins. You told a story of some guy who just like came up to you at the end of the show and like directly called you a racist slur. And part of your sort of I think your enjoyment maybe of sets is this idea of like winning people over and kind of going in front of people who don't know you and turning them into fans. Not all of them, but taking some home.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy the battle.
I just wonder if you have like a great sort of hater turned fan story or just a good tour story that you've never told before.
Yeah, I mean that the one you were talking about wasn't actually. I remember talking about that story back then, but that was actually from way before that because that wasn't with the Melvins that we were touring. That was from early days. We were touring with Rye Coalition, and that was a show we played at Auburn University, where the dude straight up was like, I was outside the place, like catching my breath, and the dude was like, y'all just, you in the hip hop group? I was like, yeah. He's like, y'all just played? I'm like, yo. And he was like, y'all a bunch of uppity niggers. And I was just looking at him, like, I looked at my man, like, yo, are you gonna stomp him out or me? And he was like, but I love your music. And then I was just fucking confused, because then I was like, I don't even know how to fucking react to what the fuck you just said to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, yo, people are crazy, man, but I mean, like that. I don't know if I converted him because I'm sure if you listen to the rest of the music, right. I don't think he's a fan. But but I mean, maybe, but you know what? But one could be hopeful.
For sure.
And maybe he learned a little something. You know
music
what I mean?
saved my life. It goes and saves lives every day.
I mean, honestly, I think those are my favorite stories. Like, I don't have a specific one, but I've definitely had. I've had people come up to me at the end of shows, telling me specifically that. You know what I mean? That like a certain song or certain album like got them through a dark time of their life, and I always find that so humbling because you never, as a musician, man, like I don't know, like that's not, you're not writing songs thinking that you're gonna affect people like that, but to know that music has that power over people, man, it's and that your song did help somebody like that, it means a lot, man. It really does. Like more than just like, oh, like I'm a fan of yours now. Like to know that the music could help people through some tough times, I think that's cool. You know what I mean? And I like the fact that I've heard those stories like around like everywhere that in different places that we played, be it like Europe, be it America, and to know that it could touch people from such different backgrounds like that is special, man. Like that shit, like I said, it's really humbling. That shit means a lot to me.
I feel like we're at a point in history where there are sort of the most number of clear political issues that need to be spoken about in culture, and these are the greatest number of important ones. And I feel like if I'm listening to the radio, I'm hearing far less vocal discussion of these issues from artists than I did hear or would have heard if I'd been alive in the 60s, 70s, even 80s, maybe especially 90s in some cases. Do you think that it's that sort of all the airwaves are corporate controlled, or is it that young people are ignorant of how to address these problems, or that they are afraid? Like, I think there's this missing conversation in music.
I think a big part of it is the corporate control, because I don't feel like there's many varied outputs. You know what I mean? Like you have like a few companies that kind of control all of that.
Yeah.
So they're not really letting on a lot of things with messages. I don't think it's a younger generational ignorance thing. I think that what you're seeing is younger generations using music more for escapism because times are so fucked up, rather than the way it was in the '60s where music was used as a tool to get like political messages and thoughts out there. But at the same time, you see younger people organizing a lot more than I saw people of my generation. You know what I mean? So I think things are being done, protests or movements are being organized at a bigger numbers and higher rate in the younger generation outside of music. So I think it's unfair to be like, oh, how come there's not enough of the message in music? I mean, I agree that there isn't, and I feel like there is a need for that. But at the same time, I also do understand wanting to have an outlet for escapism as well. You know what I mean? So I kind of wish there was more messages, but at the same time, like I don't know how much of those, I don't know how much of that would be heard anyway because of the corporate situation problem anyway. And also, I feel like I feel like there are underground bands that are saying stuff. I mean, like one of the local bands that's opening up for us, Wake. They're very political. You know what I mean? I don't think that they're being played on radio stations. You know what I mean? But their music is saying what they need to say. So they're trying to get it out there through their live shows. I mean, and through what they're doing. So I think the activists in music are there. I don't know if the numbers are as large as they should be, but I'm actually optimistic about younger generations, man, because just when I speak to them, it seems like their heads are definitely in a much better place as far as when their views on race, their views on gender, on equality, on class. I feel like their views are in a much better place than people in their people in their 30s and 40s. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a matter of just waiting for everyone to die off.
Yeah, it's one of the best things that people do is die after not too long. Like if people lived for 400 years, we'd really have problems, wouldn't we?
Yes, absolutely, man.
Yeah,
so I mean, that's the thing. It's like
cycle.
there's I don't understand how we live in a system where people, and this is, look, I'm 42 years old, man, so it's not like I'm not fucking young, B. But, I think it's weird that we live in a country where, the leader is, in his 70s. And I'm not even saying that just because I despise the person that's in there right now. I'm just saying in general, I feel like, why would you want to have someone that's on, the opposite side of, life spectrum to be the one in charge? Because to me, it's wouldn't you rather have someone that has, more to lose?
King baby.
You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not saying I want a 12-year-old either, but
I guess my thing is, why do we just have one? Why is there just one alpha gorilla that gets to tell everybody else what to do?
At the same time, I mean, the way the system is supposed to be set up. I mean, I think there is more checks and balances, and decisions shouldn't only be made by the one executive. So there should be more things being.
The United States Constitution is very strong as a document in that regard, but much of the world doesn't enjoy those kinds of balances.
No doubt.
We're at a time right now where those balances are being tested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those checks and those balances are really being tested right now.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like, I don't know, putting more power in the hands of younger people may not be a bad thing in my eyes.
I agree. Well, at least among kids who grew up with the internet, there's nobody alive who hasn't been in a chat room with some Norwegian stranger. You know what I mean? The kids on the internet have all met each other.
Yeah.
And so I think racism makes a lot less sense to them.
Absolutely.
I think that they just can't grasp why you would feel that way.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what it is. When I hit 70 and 80, I'll see what's up. See if this place is better or not.
Yeah.
But,
well, cool. Well, what's coming up next for you? Tell the people what you got going on.
So right now we are in the beginning stages of a month-long U.S. tour, after which I guess that culminates at Days of Darkness in Baltimore. I think Neurosis is playing that as well. There's a lot of good bands that are playing that, but so we'll be the lone hip-hop group there, which will be fun. Again, winning people over. So it seems to be a constant theme of my life. So we're doing that, and then home for a couple days, and off to Europe for November, doing I think 3 weeks in Europe, and that'll be it for touring for this year. supporting the new record. We'll be home for, I guess, till like early next year, and then it's definitely gonna be a lot more touring planned for 2018. Um, yeah, man. I mean, like right now we're just kind of like in that road mode where we're just gonna just hit the road heavy. I know we're doing festivals in Europe, and hopefully we'll be doing some festivals in the U.S. coming up. So we're trying to be everywhere at this point. And to be honest, I mean, like I'm also trying to get back in the studio, believe it or not, and like start working on the next one, man. Because I don't know, like I was half joking when I was telling someone, I was like, yeah, it's like as the levels of fuckery in this world escalate, I feel like my artistic output is escalating as well. So at this rate, I should be releasing a new album just about every week. But I don't know if it's gonna be that quick. But I mean, I definitely want to just. I mean, like right now, I just feel like there's a lot of things I want to say and a lot of things I want to put out there. So, we'll go back into the studio and see what comes out and see what we do next, man. I know we're gonna be working on I think a film soundtrack for a documentary coming up. I guess next year is the 20th anniversary of our first album, so I'm in discussions about seeing if we're gonna re-release that, because that's been out of print for a while, and it's actually not available digitally, legally anyway. So we're talking about having all that come out next year. So yeah, man. I mean, I got no plans of going anywhere as far as stopping. So I mean, y'all stuck with me until further notice, I guess.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for talking to us.
I appreciate it, B.
Yeah.